Sarah paced nervously in her elegantly furnished living room, the ambient glow of the street lamps casting elongated shadows through the billowing satin curtains. Her smartphone lay beside her on the intricately carved mahogany coffee table, its screen displaying the meticulously updated tracking app she had been incessantly refreshing every few minutes. The delivery was imminent, and with it, a palpable sense of relief she desperately craved after weeks of anxious anticipation. Each tick of the antique grandfather clock echoed in the spacious room, heightening Sarah's anticipation as she awaited the arrival of the package that held the key to a new chapter in her life. She had ordered a rare manuscript, rumored to contain secrets lost to time, and its arrival promised not only intellectual fulfillment, but also a connection to a past she yearned to unravel. The scent of freshly brewed jasmine tea lingered in the air, a comforting reminder of her grandmother's wisdom, which had inspired her to seek out this particular manuscript. A faint electronic chime reverberated through the tranquil confines of her home, signaling the imminent arrival of the delivery van. Sarah's heart skipped a beat as she hastily made her way to the expansive bay window, drawing back the thick velvet curtain with eager anticipation, revealing the serene suburban landscape bathed in the soft hues of twilight. The cool evening breeze carried with it a promise of fulfillment as she peered down the quiet street, her eyes fixed on the distant glow of approaching headlights. She had meticulously planned her evening around this moment, arranging her schedule to ensure she would be present when the package arrived. The anticipation mingled with a touch of apprehension, as if some inexplicable force whispered warnings just beyond her conscious reach. The soft strains of a melancholic violin piece played on the antique gramophone in the corner, adding a hauntingly beautiful backdrop to the suspenseful atmosphere. Through the crystal-clear glass, she spotted the sleek white delivery van parked just down the impeccably manicured street, its dazzling headlights piercing through the encroaching dusk like beacons of promise. With a surge of excitement, Sarah flung open the heavy oak door and stepped onto the weathered porch, poised to claim her long-awaited package. But in an abrupt and bewildering moment, the van accelerated swiftly, vanishing around the adjacent corner before she could even utter a cry of protest. The echo of its engine faded into the night, leaving Sarah standing alone in the stillness, her disappointment mingling with a growing sense of unease. Had she imagined the vanishing act, or was there a sinister game at play? Her thoughts raced, trying to piece together the puzzle of the vanishing package and the elusive delivery driver who seemed to slip through her grasp like a shadow in the night. The distant howl of a lone wolf added an eerie undertone to the unfolding mystery, echoing Sarah's own sense of isolation and uncertainty. Dumbfounded, Sarah stood on the porch, her gaze fixed on the receding taillights of the van. She retrieved her smartphone from the pocket of her elegantly embroidered gown and dialed the customer service hotline, her mounting frustration palpable with each unanswered ring. "The package has been successfully delivered," the impersonal automated voice reiterated. But Sarah harbored an unshakable conviction that something was profoundly amiss. Her mind raced with possibilities, from simple logistical errors to more ominous explanations that chilled her to the core. Was this a deliberate act of deception, or was there a deeper, darker truth lurking beneath the surface? She clenched her fists in frustration, feeling a surge of determination to uncover the truth, no matter the obstacles in her path. The ticking of the antique clock seemed to mock her, each second a reminder of the precious time slipping away. With resolve hardening her features, Sarah retraced her steps into the warmly lit foyer, where the soft glow of the chandelier cast intricate patterns on the polished marble floor. She retrieved a notepad and pen from the antique writing desk nestled in the corner, meticulously jotting down every detail of the evening's events. The flickering candlelight cast dancing shadows across her determined expression as she formulated a plan. Tomorrow she would canvass the neighborhood, seeking witnesses who might have glimpsed the elusive delivery van or its enigmatic driver. Clutching the notepad tightly to her chest, Sarah ascended the grand staircase, her footsteps echoing softly in the silence of the expansive home. The mystery of the vanishing package had become more than a mere inconvenience. It was now a quest for truth that would lead her down unexpected paths and test the limits of her courage and conviction. The faint sound of distant thunder resonated in the night sky, a harbinger of the storm brewing both outside and within Sarah's troubled mind. The next morning, Sarah knocked on the door of her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, who lived across the street. Mrs. Thompson greeted her warmly, offering tea and sympathy upon hearing Sarah's tale of the vanished package. As they sat in the cozy kitchen, Sarah described the events of the previous evening in detail, hoping Mrs. Thompson might have seen or heard something unusual. The elderly woman listened intently, her wise eyes scanning Sarah's face for any hint of deception or exaggeration. After a thoughtful pause, Mrs. Thompson mentioned seeing the delivery van parked briefly before it sped away, noting it seemed unusually hurried. Sarah's heart raced with renewed hope. Perhaps Mrs. Thompson held the key to unraveling the mystery. The comforting aroma of freshly baked cinnamon rolls filled the air, a testament to Mrs. Thompson's hospitality and warmth in the face of uncertainty. Armed with Mrs. Thompson's account, Sarah ventured further into the neighborhood, questioning other residents and piecing together their fragmented observations. A jogger mentioned seeing a white delivery van parked near the park entrance, its driver furtively glancing around before hastily departing. Another neighbor reported hearing the engine revving loudly as the van turned the corner, suggesting a hurried getaway. Each detail added a new layer to the puzzle, painting a picture of a delivery gone awry and a driver intent on evading detection. The sun emerged from behind dark clouds, casting a hopeful light on Sarah's quest for answers as she painstakingly recorded each clue in her notepad. Sarah's determination led her to the neighborhood's community center, where she discovered a surveillance camera positioned at a strategic intersection. With Mrs. Thompson's assistance, she persuaded the center's manager to review the footage from the previous night. Together they watched as the white delivery van appeared on screen, its headlights illuminating the deserted street. Sarah's heart pounded with anticipation as the footage revealed the van's brief stop outside her house and its sudden departure moments before she emerged onto the porch. There, captured in grainy black and white, was evidence of the vanishing act that had haunted her since the previous evening. The hum of the surveillance equipment filled the room, underscoring the gravity of the discovery and fueling Sarah's determination to uncover the truth. As Sarah reviewed the surveillance footage repeatedly, searching for any clue that might unravel the mystery, a familiar face caught her eye. A young boy on a bicycle had passed by just as the van sped away, his curious gaze lingering on the scene. Determined to follow every lead, Sarah tracked down the boy and questioned him about what he had seen. Timid at first, the boy eventually recounted how he had witnessed the van's abrupt departure and noted its distinctive logo, a detail that Sarah had overlooked in her initial search for answers. His youthful innocence provided a fresh perspective on the unfolding mystery, reminding Sarah of the importance of perseverance in the face of uncertainty. With the boy's information in hand, Sarah traced the logo to a local delivery company known for its efficiency and reliability. Armed with newfound determination, she visited the company's headquarters, demanding to speak with the manager responsible for the delivery routes. In a sterile office adorned with awards and accolades, Sarah confronted Mr. Johnson, the manager, about the vanishing package and the driver's suspicious behavior. Mr. Johnson, initially defensive, softened under Sarah's unwavering gaze and promised to investigate the matter thoroughly. The steady hum of office machinery provided a backdrop to their tense conversation, punctuated by Sarah's unwavering demand for truth and justice. Days turned into weeks as Sarah waited anxiously for Mr. Johnson's findings. In the meantime, she delved deeper into the history of the delivery company, uncovering rumors of a shadowy partnership with a rival firm intent on sabotaging their reputation. A pattern emerged of mysteriously missing packages and disgruntled customers, all pointing to a conspiracy that extended beyond mere incompetence. With each revelation, Sarah's determination grew, fueled by a desire for justice and a need to reclaim what was rightfully hers. The steady rhythm of Sarah's typing filled the small home office where she meticulously documented each piece of evidence, piecing together a narrative that exposed the deceitful underbelly of the delivery industry. One rainy afternoon, Sarah received a call from Mr. Johnson, his voice filled with a mix of regret and determination. He revealed that an internal investigation had uncovered evidence of deliberate sabotage orchestrated by a rogue employee and their accomplices. The vanishing package was not an isolated incident, but part of a larger scheme to undermine the company's credibility and profit from the ensuing chaos. Sarah's hands trembled with a mixture of relief and vindication as Mr. Johnson promised to rectify the situation and ensure her manuscript was delivered without further delay. The patter of rain against the window pane provided a soothing backdrop to their conversation, symbolizing the cleansing of deceit and the promise of resolution. In the following days, Sarah received a visit from Mr. Johnson himself, who personally delivered the long-awaited package to her doorstep. Their conversation was brief but heartfelt, marked by mutual respect and gratitude for Sarah's perseverance in uncovering the truth. As she held the precious manuscript in her hands, Sarah felt a profound sense of closure, knowing that justice had prevailed and that her journey had led not only to the recovery of her lost package, but also to the exposure of a deceitful conspiracy. The soft strains of classical music filled the room, a celebration of triumph and resilience in the face of adversity. In the quiet solitude of her living room, Sarah reflected on the events that had unfolded with a mixture of awe and disbelief. What had begun as a simple desire to receive a cherished manuscript had evolved into a harrowing journey of discovery and resilience. She marveled at the unexpected twists and turns that had tested her resolve and strengthened her conviction. The experience had taught her valuable lessons about perseverance, trust, and the enduring power of determination in the face of adversity. She lit a fragrant candle, its flickering flame casting a warm glow on the shelves adorned with books and mementos of her journey, each item a testament to the strength found in moments of uncertainty. As Sarah placed the recovered manuscript on the shelf beside other literary treasures, she smiled knowingly, cherishing not only the words within its pages, but also the story of courage and perseverance it had come to symbolize. The vanishing package, once a source of frustration and confusion, had transformed into a testament to Sarah's unwavering determination and the triumph of truth over deception. With renewed faith in the power of perseverance, Sarah embraced the future, knowing that she had emerged stronger and wiser from the ordeal that had tested her in ways she could never have imagined. The gentle rustling of pages turning in the breeze outside echoed the promise of new beginnings and the enduring legacy of Sarah's unwavering quest for justice. The storm raged outside Emily's small cottage, nestled deep within the dense woods that whispered ancient secrets with every gust of wind. She sat by the crackling fireplace, its warmth a feeble defense against the encroaching darkness of the night. Midnight loomed ominously, casting elongated shadows that danced on the walls like specters of forgotten tales. Emily, a young writer seeking solace in her rustic abode, scribbled feverishly in her journal. Her pen moved with urgency, capturing fleeting thoughts and half-formed ideas that seemed to materialize from the very essence of the storm itself. The wind howled mournfully outside, its mournful cries a haunting accompaniment to her solitary vigil. As the minutes stretched into hours, Emily's thoughts drifted to the unfinished manuscript on her desk, a tale of lost love and spectral encounters in a world where the boundary between reality and imagination blurred. The flickering flames cast flickering shadows across the worn wooden floor, their dance a silent narrative of the unseen forces that dwelled beyond the confines of her candlelit sanctuary. She paused, her fingers tracing the edge of the leather-bound journal, a repository of dreams and fears nestled within its weathered pages. Suddenly, a resounding knock shattered the fragile tranquility. Emily's heart skipped a beat as she glanced towards the door, her mind racing with apprehension. Who could be seeking refuge in this isolated sanctuary at such an unearthly hour? The storm outside seemed to hold its breath, as if anticipating the answer to this unspoken question. Emily's breath caught in her throat, the rhythmic drumming of rain against the window pane, a steady reminder of the world beyond her secluded haven. With hesitant steps, she approached the door, its ancient hinges groaning in protest against the raging elements outside. Through the frosted glass, she saw only the impenetrable darkness of the night, a void that seemed to swallow even the feeble light of her lantern. Fear gnawed at her resolve, yet curiosity gripped her like a vice, urging her to unlock the barrier between safety and uncertainty. The knock reverberated through the cottage, each echo a whispered warning in the storm's tumultuous symphony. Emily hesitated, her hand hovering over the worn, leather-bound journal, her sanctuary of words now a fragile shield against the unknown. She stood motionless for what seemed like an eternity, her gaze fixed on the door as if expecting it to provide answers to the questions that plagued her restless mind. Outside, the wind howled with renewed intensity, as if urging her to heed its mournful lament. With hesitant resolve, she approached the door, its ancient wood creaking under her trembling touch. With a deep breath, Emily pressed her ear against the door, straining to discern any hint of the visitor's identity. Silence greeted her, broken only by the rhythmic patter of rain against the cottage roof. She glanced back at the flickering fire, its warmth a fleeting comfort amidst the encroaching darkness. Her fingers curled around the doorknob, hesitating for a moment before she summoned the courage to turn it. The door creaked open slowly, revealing not a soul but a solitary package resting on the rain-soaked doorstep. Emily's breath caught in her throat as she swung the door open further, revealing the mysterious package left on her doorstep. The brown paper was wrinkled and damp, its edges curling like the ancient scrolls of forbidden knowledge. Raindrops pattered against the parcel's surface, adding to its weathered appearance. There was no return address, no hint of sender or purpose, only a mysterious parcel left in the dead of night, a harbinger of secrets yet to be unveiled. With trembling hands, she retrieved the package, its weight heavy with anticipation and foreboding. Closing the door behind her, Emily carried the parcel into the warmth of her cottage. The fire crackled cheerfully in the hearth, casting flickering shadows that seemed to dance across the walls. She placed the mysterious package on her sturdy oak table, its surface polished smooth by years of solitude and introspection. Emily hesitated, her fingers tracing the frayed edges of the damp wrapping paper, reluctant to unveil the enigmatic contents within. With a deep breath, she tore away the paper, revealing a collection of antiquities that seemed frozen in time. A cracked porcelain doll greeted Emily's gaze, its painted features frozen in a haunting expression. The doll's eyes, once bright and lifelike, now stared back at her with a vacant, soulless gaze that sent a chill down her spine. Its porcelain skin bore the cracks and imperfections of age, hinting at a history fraught with forgotten memories and untold secrets. Beside it lay a tarnished silver mirror, its surface marred by time and neglect. As Emily studied her reflection in the mirror, she noticed subtle distortions that seemed to warp the very fabric of reality. Shadows flitted across its surface, their movements elusive and ephemeral. At the center of the table lay a yellowed book bound in weathered leather, its pages emitting a faint, otherworldly glow that pulsed with an unsettling rhythm. The book seemed to radiate a strange energy, as if whispering secrets that transcended the boundaries of time and space. Emily hesitated, her hand hovering over the book's cover, drawn to its enigmatic aura yet wary of the knowledge it promised to impart. The air in the cottage grew heavy with anticipation, a palpable tension that seemed to permeate every corner of the room. Emily's pulse quickened as she reached out to touch the ancient artifacts, each one a relic of forgotten lore steeped in mystery and dread. The porcelain doll seemed to radiate a chill that permeated the air, its fragile form imbued with a presence that sent shivers down her spine. The tarnished mirror reflected not only her own visage but glimpses of fleeting shadows that flitted across its surface, as if eager to escape their ethereal prison. And the leather-bound book whispered tales of lost civilizations and arcane rituals, its pages fluttering with the weight of untold knowledge that threatened to unravel the fabric of reality itself. With each passing moment, Emily felt the boundaries between myth and reality blur, her curiosity entwined with a growing sense of unease that lingered like a lingering mist in the darkest corners of her mind. As Emily studied the artifacts with a mix of fascination and trepidation, a sudden movement caught her eye. A flicker of movement in the silver mirror, a shadow that seemed to dance just beyond her line of sight. She froze, her breath catching in her throat as she turned towards the mirror, its reflective surface now a gateway to a world that defied reason and logic. In its depths, she saw fleeting glimpses of figures cloaked in darkness, their faces obscured by veils of uncertainty. Panic threatened to consume her as she struggled to comprehend the haunting vision unfolding before her, each moment stretching into an eternity of fear and disbelief. The cottage seemed to hum with an otherworldly energy, the boundaries between the mundane and the supernatural growing ever thinner with each passing heartbeat. Emily's fingers trembled as she reached for the leather-bound book, its pages whispering promises of forbidden knowledge that beckoned her closer to the brink of understanding. With hesitant resolve, she traced the ancient symbols etched into the cover, their meaning lost to time yet somehow familiar in their primal resonance. The air grew heavy with anticipation, a palpable tension that threaded through the very fabric of reality, threatening to unravel the fragile veil that separated her from the unknown forces that now encircled her. A chill swept through the room, icy fingers caressing Emily's skin with a touch that spoke of ancient grievances and unspoken desires. Shadows danced along the walls, their movements synchronized with the erratic beating of her heart. She felt the weight of unseen eyes upon her, a gaze that pierced through the veil of darkness with an intensity that bordered on madness. Fear coiled within her chest, yet curiosity remained a persistent flame that refused to be extinguished. With a trembling hand, she opened the leather-bound book, its pages whispering secrets that echoed through the ages like a siren's call. The words written within the book glowed with an ethereal light, their ancient script pulsating with a power that transcended mortal comprehension. Emily hesitated, her gaze fixed upon the arcane symbols that danced across the yellowed pages like flames in the night. With a voice that trembled with uncertainty, she began to recite the incantation, each syllable a bridge between the mundane world and the realms of the supernatural. The air grew thick with anticipation, a palpable energy that hummed with the promise of revelation and reckoning. As the final words escaped her lips, a surge of power coursed through the room, engulfing her in a whirlwind of sensation and sound. A darkness stirred within the depths of the cottage, a malevolent presence that hungered for release. Emily's eyes widened in horror as she realized the grave mistake she had made, her curiosity paving the way for something far more sinister than she could have ever imagined. Shadows coalesced into twisted forms that prowled the periphery of her vision, their whispers like daggers against the silence. The air grew heavy with despair, a suffocating weight that threatened to crush her fragile resolve. She stumbled backward, her heart pounding in her chest as she sought refuge from the encroaching darkness. Time seemed to stand still as Emily struggled to make sense of the chaos unfolding around her. The cottage walls groaned under the weight of unseen forces, their ancient timbers creaking in protest against the intrusion of the supernatural. Outside, the storm raged with renewed fury, its wrath a reflection of the turmoil that now gripped her very soul. She cast desperate glances towards the artifacts that had unwittingly become conduits for the malevolent presence, their presence a reminder of her unwitting complicity in this unfolding nightmare. With each passing moment, the boundaries between reality and illusion blurred, threatening to ensnare her in a labyrinth of twisted truths and shattered perceptions. Fear consumed Emily like a wildfire, its flames licking at the edges of her sanity with relentless hunger. She stumbled through the labyrinthine corridors of her mind, pursued by phantoms that whispered of forgotten sins and hidden desires. Shadows danced at the periphery of her vision, their movements synchronized with the pounding of her heart. She clung to fragments of reason, seeking refuge in the dwindling light of her dwindling resolve. Yet the darkness continued to encroach, its tendrils reaching out to ensnare her in a web of despair and delusion. Voices echoed through the cottage, their words a distorted chorus of regret and remorse. Emily's breath came in ragged gasps as she struggled to discern reality from illusion. The artifacts that had once seemed innocuous now pulsed with a malevolent energy, their presence a testament to her unwitting role in this supernatural drama. She turned towards the mirror, its tarnished surface reflecting fractured glimpses of a world that had unraveled at the seams. Faces stared back at her, their expressions twisted in agony and despair. She recoiled from their accusing gaze, the weight of their judgment threatening to crush her fragile resolve. Emily stood at the precipice of oblivion, her mind a battlefield where fear and determination clashed with ferocious intensity. Shadows converged around her, their forms coalescing into a singular, malevolent entity that hungered for release. She clutched the leather-bound book tightly to her chest, its pages fluttering in the tumultuous wind that swept through the cottage. With trembling hands, she began to chant the incantation once more, each word a desperate plea for redemption and absolution. The air crackled with supernatural energy, a tempest of emotions that threatened to consume her very essence. In a blinding flash of light, the malevolent presence was banished from the cottage, its influence dissipating like mist in the morning sun. Emily collapsed to her knees, the weight of her ordeal finally settling upon her trembling shoulders. The artifacts lay scattered around her, their once malevolent aura now diminished to mere relics of a harrowing journey. She gazed around the cottage, its walls now bathed in the soft glow of dawn's first light. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world forever changed by the events of that fateful night. As Emily sat amidst the remnants of her ordeal, she knew that she had glimpsed a reality far beyond the confines of mortal understanding. The leather-bound book lay open before her, its pages a testament to the dangers of delving too deeply into the unknown. She closed her eyes, her mind awash with memories of shadows and whispers, of a journey that had tested her courage and resolve to their very limits. And yet, amidst the darkness, she found a spark of hope, a beacon that reminded her of the strength that lay within her heart. The story of the midnight delivery would forever linger in Emily's thoughts, a cautionary tale of curiosity and consequence, of the thin veil that separates the mundane from the extraordinary. And as she rose to her feet, ready to face the uncertain future that awaited her beyond the cottage walls, Emily knew that she had emerged not unscathed, but forever changed by the haunting echoes of that unforgettable night. Sarah, a talented graphic designer in her mid-20s, had recently moved into a cozy but slightly run-down apartment in the heart of the city. The space held the promise of a fresh start, yet its bare walls and empty corners whispered of the homey touches it lacked. Determined to make it her own, Sarah spent countless evenings scouring online marketplaces for unique decor that would imbue her new home with personality. One late night, amidst scrolling through pages of mass-produced trinkets, Sarah stumbled upon a website unlike any she had encountered before, Eternal Relics. The site boasted an eclectic collection of rare and vintage artifacts, each with its own intriguing backstory. It was here, amidst a digital trove of curiosities, that Sarah's eyes fell upon a stunning Victorian mirror. The mirror, with its ornate golden frame and the faint hint of age in its slightly tarnished glass, captivated Sarah instantly. It seemed to whisper secrets of bygone eras and hidden stories, beckoning her to claim it as her own. Without hesitation, Sarah added it to her cart and proceeded to check out, her heart racing with excitement and anticipation. Minutes after completing her purchase, Sarah received a confirmation email from Eternal Relics. The subject line read, "Your order from Eternal Relics," and she eagerly opened it to find a polite thank you message along with a tracking number for her mirror's delivery. Her pulse quickened with each word read, already imagining the mirror's arrival and the touch of history it would bring to her humble abode. In the days that followed, Sarah's routine became intertwined with the tracking updates from Eternal Relics. Each morning before work and every evening after, she would eagerly refresh the shipping status, hoping for a glimpse of progress. The initial updates were mundane and expected: order processing, followed by item shipped, and then in transit. Yet as Sarah observed, a subtle shift began to creep into the notifications. It started innocuously enough, with minor details in the updates catching her attention. A delay here, an unusual route there. While these deviations were slight and easily dismissed, they planted the seeds of unease in Sarah's mind. One quiet evening, as Sarah lounged on her worn-out couch with a cup of herbal tea, her phone buzzed softly with a new notification from Eternal Relics. Anticipating another routine update, she absent-mindedly unlocked her phone and opened the email. However, what greeted her on the screen sent a shiver down her spine. "Your reflection awaits. ETA, midnight." The words hung in the air, their meaning elusive yet undeniably unsettling. Sarah's brow furrowed in confusion and mild apprehension. Was this some clever marketing tactic, a playful attempt by Eternal Relics to enhance the customer experience with cryptic messages? She tried to dismiss the unease creeping into her thoughts, chalking it up to late-night jitters and an overactive imagination. As the days stretched into weeks, Sarah found herself increasingly preoccupied with the updates from Eternal Relics. The once familiar routine of checking her phone for shipping updates took on a new weight, each notification carrying with it a sense of anticipation tinged with apprehension. The updates grew progressively obscure and unsettling. In transit through shadows, read one notification that appeared unexpectedly during a particularly stormy afternoon. The words, innocuous on their own, evoked a sense of foreboding that lingered long after Sarah had closed the email. She found herself glancing nervously over her shoulder, half expecting to catch a glimpse of movement in the corners of her apartment, shadows that seemed to shift and swirl in the dim light. Days turned into weeks, and Sarah's unease only deepened with each passing update. It was a quiet evening, the soft glow of her lamp casting a warm hue over her cozy apartment, when a new notification from Eternal Relics flashed across her phone screen. Approaching your realm, beware the 5th hour. The message sent a chill down Sarah's spine, its cryptic wording resonating with an unsettling familiarity. She read and reread the words, searching for any clue that might explain their ominous undertone. What did approaching your realm mean? And why the ominous warning about the 5th hour? The unanswered questions gnawed at her, fueling a growing sense of unease and curiosity that threatened to overshadow her initial excitement over the mirror's impending arrival. Unable to shake the feeling of unease that had settled like a heavy blanket over her thoughts, Sarah found herself drawn deeper into a labyrinth of research. Late nights were spent hunched over her laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard as she delved into the shadows of the internet in search of answers. Her quest led her down obscure paths and into forgotten corners of the web. She scoured forums, sifted through archived blog posts, and devoured accounts from former customers of Eternal Relics. What she uncovered sent a chill down her spine, a tapestry of unsettling stories and eerie anecdotes surrounding the company's enigmatic operations. Sarah's research unearthed unsettling accounts of deliveries from Eternal Relics that defied conventional logic and reason. There were whispers of packages arriving at odd hours of the night, bearing items that seemed to carry a palpable aura of darkness and malevolence. Some customers reported disturbing experiences, visions in mirrors, inexplicable noises, and a pervasive sense of being watched by unseen eyes. She stumbled upon a blog post recounting a similar experience to her own. A woman who had ordered an antique lamp received cryptic messages about its journey, each update becoming progressively more ominous until the final delivery left her feeling haunted and unnerved. Driven by a potent mix of fear and morbid curiosity, Sarah delved deeper into the murky history of Eternal Relics. Rumors and legends intertwined with facts, weaving a tale of a company with roots that stretched back centuries. Whispers suggested ties to occult practices, ancient rituals involving cursed artifacts, and a clientele that sought more than mere collectibles. They sought relics that carried with them the weight of history, both wondrous and sinister. There were stories of cursed mirrors that trapped souls within their glassy confines, of paintings that whispered secrets to those who dared to gaze upon them. Sarah's fascination with the mirror she had ordered began to shift, a curiosity tinged with trepidation and a growing awareness of the shadows that lurked just beyond the surface. Weeks passed, and Sarah's apprehension reached a fever pitch when she received an unexpected notification from Eternal Relics, one stormy night. Package arrived, handle with care. The timing was peculiar, as the message appeared well past midnight, casting a surreal aura over the apartment that Sarah had come to call home. Heart pounding in her chest, Sarah cautiously approached her apartment door. There, sitting innocuously on her welcome mat amidst the flickering light of the hallway, was a small, ornate package wrapped in aged parchment. The air around it felt charged, as if a static energy clung to the package like a veil of unseen forces. With trembling hands, Sarah carefully unwrapped the package, her fingers tracing the delicate folds of aged parchment. Inside, nestled protectively within layers of velvet, was the mirror she had ordered from Eternal Relics. Its surface gleamed softly in the dim light of her hallway, casting ethereal reflections on the walls around her. As Sarah gazed upon the mirror, her own reflection stared back at her, unchanged, and yet somehow different. There was a depth to its gaze, a sense of otherness that sent a chill down her spine. For a fleeting moment, she thought she saw movement behind her own reflection, a shadowy figure that seemed to linger just beyond the edge of her perception before vanishing into the mirror's depths. Fear gripped Sarah's heart as she realized the mirror might be more than just an antique. It seemed to hold a presence, a malevolent force that lingered just beyond the surface, unseen yet keenly felt. She hesitated, torn between fascination and growing unease, as the mirror exerted its enigmatic pull upon her senses. Night after night, Sarah found herself drawn to the mirror, unable to resist its eerie allure. Each time she gazed into its glass, the reflection seemed to distort, showing glimpses of a world beyond her understanding, a realm where shadows danced and whispers echoed in the darkness. It was as if the mirror held a gateway to another dimension, one that beckoned her with promises both enticing and perilous. Driven by fear and an insatiable thirst for answers, Sarah intensified her research into the mirror's origins and its connection to eternal relics. She sought out experts in occult lore and ancient artifacts, determined to unravel the mystery before it consumed her completely. In dusty archives and dimly lit libraries, Sarah uncovered fragments of forgotten legends and arcane rituals tied to mirrors. She learned of their role as conduits for supernatural energies, capable of capturing souls and bridging the gap between worlds. The more she discovered, the more she realized that her mirror was not simply a decorative piece, but a vessel imbued with the potential for both wonder and terror. As Sarah's obsession grew, so did the mirror's influence over her fragile psyche. She started hearing whispers in the night, faint voices that seemed to call to her from within its depths. They spoke in a language she couldn't understand, their words a haunting melody that echoed through her dreams and waking hours alike. Sleep became elusive as Sarah wrestled with visions of shadowy figures and ghostly apparitions. She felt a presence in her apartment, a feeling of being watched by unseen eyes that followed her every move. The boundary between reality and nightmare blurred, leaving Sarah teetering on the edge of sanity as she struggled to comprehend the mirror's insidious hold over her. Desperate for clarity and resolution, Sarah sought out a reclusive scholar rumored to possess knowledge of ancient rituals and supernatural phenomena. They met in a secluded study surrounded by towering bookshelves lined with dusty tomes and illuminated by the flickering light of candles. The scholar spoke in hushed tones of a ritual linked to mirrors, a ritual that could awaken dormant forces and unleash chaos upon the world. Sarah listened intently, her mind racing with questions and fears as the scholar warned of the dangers of meddling with forces beyond human comprehension. Armed with newfound insights and a growing sense of dread, Sarah confronted the elusive owners of eternal relics. They spoke in riddles and half-truths, their words cloaked in ambiguity and veiled warnings. Sarah sensed that they knew more than they let on, their eyes betraying a flicker of fear beneath a facade of composed indifference. They hinted at ancient pacts and forbidden knowledge, suggesting that Sarah had stumbled upon something far more significant than a mere transaction. She left the meeting with more questions than answers, her resolve to uncover the truth strengthened by the unnerving encounter. The mirror's influence over Sarah intensified with each passing day, its demands growing more insistent and impossible to ignore. It called to her in whispered promises of power and revelation, tempting her with glimpses of secrets hidden within its shimmering depths. Sarah found herself drawn irresistibly to the mirror, unable to resist its allure despite the growing peril it posed. She spent hours entranced by its ever-shifting reflections, each image a tantalizing puzzle piece in a larger enigmatic tableau. The mirror seemed to hold the key to unlocking mysteries both ancient and profound, yet its revelations came at a price Sarah feared she might not be willing or able to pay. Haunted by visions and tormented by fear, Sarah's grasp on reality began to unravel. Shadows moved where there should be none, and echoes of ghostly laughter reverberated through her once silent apartment. She questioned her sanity, unsure of what was real and what was a trick of the mirror's twisted reflections. Days blurred into nights as Sarah struggled to maintain a semblance of normalcy amidst the mounting chaos. She withdrew from friends and family, consumed by her obsession with the mirror and the dark forces it seemed to beckon. The boundary between observer and participant dissolved, leaving Sarah adrift in a sea of uncertainty and dread. In a moment of stark clarity, Sarah pieced together the mirror's true nature and the ominous legacy of eternal relics. It wasn't merely a reflection of herself, it was a gateway to a realm of nightmares, a portal through which malevolent entities sought entry into her world. The mirror had ensnared her with promises of beauty and enlightenment, only to entrap her in a web of deceit and malevolence. Sarah traced the mirror's origins back through layers of forgotten lore and whispered legends. She learned of its capacity to imprison souls and harness their energies for sinister purposes. The more she uncovered, the more she realized the danger she was in, a danger that extended far beyond her own existence. Faced with no other recourse, Sarah made a fateful decision. She would destroy the mirror, severing the connection between their worlds once and for all. Armed with a hammer and trembling hands, she approached the mirror, a relic of beauty and terror that had come to dominate her life in ways she had never imagined. The mirror shimmered with an otherworldly glow as Sarah raised the hammer, her heart hammering in her chest. A voice whispered in her ear, tempting her with promises of forbidden knowledge and untold power. Doubt gnawed at her resolve, but with a final, desperate cry, Sarah brought the hammer down. The mirror shattered into 1,000 fractured pieces, unleashing a torrent of dark energy that engulfed Sarah in its malevolent embrace. In that fleeting moment, she glimpsed the true horror of eternal relics and the price paid for tampering with forces beyond mortal understanding. Silence descended upon the apartment, broken only by the ragged sound of Sarah's breaths. She collapsed to her knees, trembling with exhaustion and relief. The mirror was gone, shattered into irreparable shards that scattered across the floor like fragments of a shattered dream. Yet, despite the shattered glass and the dissipating shadows, Sarah knew that some wounds ran deeper than the surface. The echoes of her ordeal lingered, a haunting reminder of the darkness that had nearly consumed her. She had stared into the abyss, and the abyss had stared back, leaving scars that time could never fully heal. It was a dreary afternoon when Jake, a young man living alone in a small apartment, found a mysterious parcel on his doorstep. The weather matched his mood, gray, with a hint of impending rain. As he approached his front door, his eyes fell upon the package. It was an old, worn box, its edges frayed, and the brown paper it was wrapped in had seen better days. The package had no return address, just his name written in elegant, old-fashioned script that seemed almost out of place in the modern world. Jake bent down, picked up the parcel, and carried it inside. He placed it on his kitchen table and stared at it for a moment, curiosity mixing with a sense of foreboding. There was something oddly compelling about the box, as if it held secrets waiting to be unveiled. Jake decided to open the parcel, his curiosity getting the better of him. He carefully peeled away the brittle paper, revealing an intricately carved wooden box beneath. The craftsmanship was exquisite, the wood dark and polished, with symbols and patterns he couldn't recognize. It looked ancient, a relic from another time. His fingers traced the carvings, feeling the grooves and indentations. The box had a small brass lock, but to his surprise, it opened easily. Inside, nestled in a bed of crimson velvet, was an artifact that took his breath away, a small ornate amulet made of a strange gleaming metal. It was unlike anything he had ever seen before, with a deep red gemstone set in the center that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. As Jake held the amulet in his hand, a sudden wave of dizziness washed over him. He closed his eyes, trying to steady himself, but when he opened them again, he was no longer in his apartment. He found himself standing in a dark, ancient forest, the trees towering above him like silent sentinels. The air was thick with mist, and an eerie silence hung in the air. Jake's heart pounded in his chest as he looked around, trying to make sense of his surroundings. He took a tentative step forward, and the forest seemed to close in around him. Shadows flitted at the edges of his vision, and he could feel eyes watching him from the darkness. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, a woman, her face pale and gaunt, with eyes that glowed with an unnatural light. She wore tattered, old-fashioned clothing, and her hair hung in disheveled strands around her face. Jake's breath caught in his throat as she approached him, her movements slow and deliberate. "Who are you?" he managed to whisper, his voice trembling. The woman didn't answer. Instead, she raised a bony finger and pointed at the amulet in his hand. Her eyes locked onto his, and Jake felt a cold, malevolent force seep into his very being. He wanted to run, to scream, but he was paralyzed by fear. With a jolt, Jake found himself back in his apartment, the amulet still clutched in his hand. He was drenched in sweat, his heart racing. He looked around, half expecting to see the ghostly woman standing in the corner, but he was alone. He dropped the amulet onto the table and stumbled to the sink, splashing cold water on his face. What had just happened? Had it been a dream? A hallucination? But the amulet was real, and so were the visions that still lingered in his mind. Determined to find answers, Jake spent the next few hours researching the amulet. He scoured the internet, looking for anything that might explain its origins or the visions he had experienced. He found references to ancient artifacts, curses, and legends, but nothing that matched the amulet exactly. As the night wore on, Jake's exhaustion got the better of him. He fell asleep at his desk, his computer screen still glowing with half-read articles. But his sleep was far from peaceful. He was plagued by nightmares, visions of the forest, the ghostly woman, and the feeling of being watched. Jake awoke with a start, the early morning light filtering through the blinds. He rubbed his eyes, trying to shake off the remnants of his dreams. As he glanced at the amulet on the table, a chill ran down his spine. He knew he had to get rid of it, but a strange compulsion kept him from doing so. Later that day, as he was going about his routine, another wave of dizziness hit him. He dropped to his knees, clutching his head as the world around him shifted once more. This time, he found himself in a dilapidated mansion, the walls covered in peeling wallpaper and cobwebs. The air was thick with decay, and the floorboards creaked under his weight. As he explored the mansion, he heard whispers, soft, unintelligible murmurs that seemed to come from all directions. He followed the sound, his steps echoing in the empty halls. Jake entered a room at the end of the hallway and froze. The ghostly woman was there standing by the window. She turned to face him, her eyes filled with sorrow and anger. This time she spoke, her voice a haunting whisper that sent chills down his spine. "You have disturbed the resting down and picked up the parcel, feeling its unexpected weight." His curiosity was immediately piqued. Who could have sent this? He had no pending orders, no friends or family who would send him something without a note or a heads up. He carried it inside, the weight of the box adding a sense of urgency to his steps. With a heavy heart, Jake and Emily embarked on a journey to the artifact's origin, a remote and desolate place far from civilization. The journey was fraught with obstacles, and the presence of the malevolent spirits grew stronger with each passing day. They encountered strange phenomena, visions of the past, ghostly apparitions, and unexplainable occurrences that tested their resolve. The roads were long and winding, often disappearing into dense forests or barren landscapes, leaving them feeling isolated and vulnerable. Each night, as they camped under the stars or in rundown motels, the hauntings grew more intense. Shadowy figures loomed over their beds, whispers filled their ears, and cold fingers seemed to brush against their skin. Sleep was elusive, and both Jake and Emily found themselves growing more and more exhausted. Their only solace was the thought that they were getting closer to their destination and hopefully to breaking the curse. After days of grueling travel, they finally reached the ancient ruins where the artifact was first used. The place was steeped in a dark history, the air thick with malevolence. The ruins were overgrown with vines, and the stone structures were weathered by time, giving an eerie sense of the past reaching out to the present. As they explored the site, they discovered carvings and symbols that matched those on the artifact. The air was heavy, and every step seemed to echo with the whispers of the long dead. Jake and Emily could feel the weight of the centuries-old curse pressing down on them. The ruins seemed to pulse with dark energy, and they knew they had to act quickly. Every moment they lingered, the spirits grew more agitated, their forms flickering in the corners of their vision, their voices growing louder and more desperate. Emily, with her knowledge of the occult, began preparing the cleansing ritual. She gathered herbs, drew protective symbols, and chanted ancient incantations. Jake assisted her, his hands shaking as he held the artifact. The atmosphere grew tense as the spirits sensed their intention and began to manifest more aggressively. Shadows moved in the corners of their vision, and ghostly whispers filled the air, creating an oppressive sense of dread. Emily explained that the ritual required absolute focus, and that any mistake could have dire consequences. Jake's mind raced with fears of what might happen if they failed, but he pushed the thoughts aside and concentrated on following Emily's instructions. They set up a small altar in the center of the ruins, surrounded by the protective symbols Emily had drawn. The air crackled with energy, and the spirits grew more agitated, their forms becoming more distinct and menacing. As Emily performed the ritual, Jake placed the artifact on the ancient altar. The ground trembled and the air grew colder. The spirits appeared, their forms more distinct and menacing. Emily's chants grew louder, and a blinding light emanated from the altar. The spirits screamed in agony as the light consumed them, their forms writhing and dissolving into nothingness. The artifact began to glow, its twisted features contorting as if in pain. Jake felt a surge of energy pass through him, a connection to the spirits and the ancient curse that had bound them. He struggled to remain standing, his vision blurring as the light grew more intense. Emily's voice rose above the cacophony, her chants reaching a crescendo as the spirits were drawn into the artifact, their screams echoing in the night air. Just as they thought the ritual was working, a powerful spirit, more formidable than the others, emerged from the shadows. This spirit was the source of the curse, a malevolent entity that had been bound to the artifact for centuries. It loomed over Jake and Emily, its eyes burning with hatred and fury. Emily's chants faltered as the spirit approached, its presence overwhelming. Jake knew they were in grave danger. Summoning all his courage, he stepped forward, holding the artifact aloft. The spirit's gaze fixed on him, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. The spirit lunged at Jake, its form twisting and writhing as it tried to break free from the ritual's confines. Realizing that the only way to complete the ritual was to offer a personal sacrifice, Jake made a desperate decision. He clasped the artifact tightly and plunged it into his own chest. Pain seared through his body, but he kept his grip firm. The spirit shrieked in rage, its form drawn into the artifact, which began to absorb Jake's life force. Emily watched in horror as Jake's strength waned. She resumed her chants, her voice steady and resolute, amplifying the power of the ritual. The light from the artifact intensified, enveloping Jake and the spirit in a blinding glow. The ground beneath them shook, and the ruins seemed to come alive, the ancient stones resonating with the power of the ritual. When the light finally faded, the spirit was gone, and the artifact lay dormant on the altar. Jake collapsed, his body weak but alive. Emily rushed to his side, tears streaming down her face. The curse was broken, and the malevolent spirits had been banished. The ruins, once a place of dark energy, now felt peaceful, as if the land itself was finally at rest. Jake and Emily returned home, forever changed by their harrowing experience. The artifact was buried deep within the ruins, never to be disturbed again. Jake knew that he had narrowly escaped a fate worse than death, and he vowed to live his life free from the shadows of the past. The memory of the cursed parcel and the terrifying journey they had undertaken would stay with them forever, a reminder of the power of courage and friendship in the face of unimaginable darkness. Jack Parker, a young man in his early 20s, was thrilled when he landed a job as a delivery driver. The pay was decent, and he needed the money to pay off his mounting debts. The logistics company he worked for, Eldritch Deliveries, was new in town, and their office was located in a nondescript building at the edge of the city. On his first day, Jack met his supervisor, Mr. Harlow, a tall, gaunt man with a perpetually stern expression. Mr. Harlow handed Jack a list of addresses and an old, beat-up delivery van. "Your route today will take you to a rural area just outside the city," Mr. Harlow explained in a monotone voice. "Make sure you deliver all the packages by tonight." As Jack drove away from the bustling city, the landscape gradually changed. The tall buildings and busy streets gave way to sprawling fields and dense forests. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the road. Jack couldn't shake the feeling of unease that settled in the pit of his stomach. Jack's GPS directed him to the first address on his list, a weathered farmhouse at the edge of a dense forest. The house looked like it had been abandoned for years. Its windows were shattered, and the front door hung ajar on its hinges. Weeds and vines choked the path leading up to the porch, and the whole place exuded an air of neglect and decay. Jack hesitated for a moment, but then he reminded himself that this was just a job. He grabbed the package from the back of the van and made his way to the front door. As he approached, the temperature seemed to drop, and he could swear he heard faint whispers coming from inside the house. He quickly placed the package on the porch and turned to leave. Just as he reached the van, he glanced back and saw a shadowy figure standing in the doorway, watching him. He blinked, and the figure was gone. Shaking off the chill that had settled over him, Jack climbed into the van and drove away, eager to put distance between himself and the creepy farmhouse. The next address led Jack to a dilapidated barn surrounded by overgrown weeds. The barn's wooden exterior was weathered and cracked, and the roof sagged in several places. The large barn door creaked open as Jack approached, revealing a dark interior filled with shadows. Jack called out, hoping to find someone to take the package, but his voice echoed back at him unanswered. Steeling himself, he walked into the barn and placed the package on a nearby haystack. As he turned to leave, he heard a rustling sound behind him. He spun around, his heart pounding, but there was nothing there. The feeling of being watched was even stronger here than at the farmhouse. Jack hurried back to his van, glancing over his shoulder every few steps. Once he was safely inside, he locked the doors and took a moment to catch his breath. He couldn't shake the sense that something was very wrong with this route. Jack's third delivery took him to an old cemetery. The iron gates were rusted and hung open, inviting him in. Tombstones stood in crooked rows, some so worn that the names and dates were no longer legible. The ground was covered in a thick layer of mist that seemed to cling to his ankles as he walked. He found the designated grave, marked with the name Eleanor Gray. The tombstone was adorned with intricate carvings of roses and angels, though time had worn them down. Jack placed the package at the foot of the tombstone and took a step back. As he did, he heard footsteps behind him, slow and deliberate. Jack's heart raced as he turned around, but the cemetery was empty. The mist swirled around him, and he could feel a cold breeze that seemed to come from nowhere. He hurried back to the van, feeling the weight of unseen eyes upon him. As he drove away, he glanced in the rearview mirror and saw a figure standing by the grave, watching him leave. The next stop on Jack's route was an old inn that looked like it hadn't seen guests in decades. The windows were boarded up, and the once cheerful sign now hung crookedly, squeaking in the wind. The front porch sagged under its own weight, and the entire building seemed to lean to one side. Jack left the package on the porch, feeling an intense urge to flee. The inn's dilapidated appearance was unsettling enough, but there was something more, an oppressive feeling that seemed to emanate from the very walls. As he turned to leave, he caught a glimpse of a pale face watching him from an upstairs window. The eyes were hollow, and the skin was stretched tight over the bones. Jack's breath caught in his throat, and he stumbled as he made his way back to the van. He fumbled with the keys, finally managing to start the engine and drive away. He didn't look back, but he could feel the weight of that gaze lingering on him long after the inn was out of sight. Jack arrived at an abandoned school, its playground rusted and overgrown. The swings creaked in the wind, and the merry-go-round was covered in a layer of grime. The building itself was a hulking structure of red brick with boarded-up windows and a crumbling facade. He walked through the empty halls, his footsteps echoing loudly in the silence. The walls were lined with peeling paint and faded posters. Jack found the classroom listed on the address, filled with broken desks and faded chalkboards. He placed the package on the teacher's desk, but as he did, he heard the sound of children's laughter echoing down the hall. The sound was faint and distant, but it sent chills down his spine. He knew the school was empty, but the laughter continued, growing louder and more insistent. Jack rushed out of the classroom, his footsteps echoing in time with the ghostly laughter. By the time he reached his van, he was almost running, desperate to escape the eerie sound. The next address was a cabin deep in the woods. The narrow path leading to it was overgrown with roots and brambles, and the trees seemed to close in around him as he drove. The cabin itself was a small, dark structure, barely visible through the thick foliage. Jack left the package on the doorstep and turned to leave, but as he did, he heard a low growl coming from the shadows. He froze, his heart pounding in his chest. The growl grew louder, and he could see a pair of glowing eyes watching him from the darkness. Fear took over, and Jack sprinted back to his van, the sound of twigs snapping underfoot filling the air. He didn't stop until he was back on the main road, his hands shaking as he gripped the steering wheel. He glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see those glowing eyes following him, but there was nothing there. Jack's penultimate delivery took him to a grand but decaying mansion. The front gate creaked open and the house loomed menacingly behind it. The windows were dark and empty, and the front door stood slightly ajar as if inviting him in. Jack stepped inside, guided by a sense of obligation, and placed the package on a dusty table in the foyer. The air was thick with the smell of rot and decay, and every step he took echoed through the empty house. As he turned to leave, the door slammed shut behind him, and he heard faint, ghostly voices calling his name. Panic surged through him, and he struggled to open the door, finally managing to wrench it open. He stumbled outside, gasping for breath. The voices faded as soon as he was back in the open air, but the feeling of dread lingered. He ran to his van, desperate to leave the mansion and its haunting whispers behind. With one final address left, Jack drove to a remote house at the end of a long, winding road. The house was in ruins, barely standing. The roof had caved in and the walls were covered in ivy. It looked as though it had been abandoned for years. Jack entered cautiously, the floorboards creaking under his weight. Inside, he found the interior filled with old photographs of previous delivery drivers. The faces in the photos were twisted in fear, their eyes wide with terror. Jack's heart sank as he realized the implications. These were the drivers who had disappeared, never to be seen again. The walls seemed to close in on him, and shadows crept towards him from every corner. Jack dropped the package and ran, his footsteps echoing through the empty house. He burst through the front door and sprinted to his van, the sound of his own breathing loud in his ears. Jack finally escaped to the town's only gas station, desperate to get help. The old attendant looked at him with pity and handed him a newspaper clipping. The headline read, "Mysterious Disappearances of Delivery Drivers in Rural Town." Jack's heart sank as he saw his own name among the missing. He turned to leave, but the attendant stopped him, whispering, "You can never leave." The realization dawned on Jack. He was trapped, just like the others, forever bound to the haunted town. The oppressive feeling of dread settled over him as he understood his fate. The town's dark history had claimed another victim, and Jack Parker would be just another lost soul in its cursed annals. And so Jack became another lost soul in the town's dark history, a warning to any who dare to deliver to the forsaken addresses. The eerie silence of the town swallowed him whole, and his story became part of the legend that would haunt future delivery drivers, who might one day find themselves on the same cursed route.